Well, Servants Anonymous is actually a long-standing organization in the city that has always looked after women who were looking to exit the sex trade, situations of exploitation and human trafficking. So for 24 years, we've provided that escape for girls and young women who are looking to change their lives and not be violated any longer. Unfortunately, we found a challenge now that it's become quite troubling in that we have a safe house program so that we can provide that immediate exit for women coming off of the streets or out of shelters or right out of those dangerous situations. And our safe house, unfortunately, has not been renewed its government funding. So though there's lots of government, different levels of government and people in government who are very concerned about this issue, want to see programs for women and for children so that they can find health and recovery. Right now, because of some provincial budget restrictions that have occurred in Alberta, it's been very difficult for us to be able to secure any sort of sustainable long-term core funding from government, who should be funding these programs. This is about vulnerable citizens and people who need that help. So the government was funding us for the last 4 years for our Safe House program, and they released their new budget in early March 2013, and a day later sent us an email saying that our funding would not be renewed as of March the 31st. So since March the 31st, we've had no funding from government at all. We were very lucky in that, like most nonprofit organizations, we try to do some planning ahead, and we had a reserve fund, but that only takes us until the end of June. Happily, our landlord is very generous, really great guy. He's come forward and said that we could have an additional month of free rent, so we have until July 31st, but that doesn't mean we can keep women in the safe house till July 31st. We've already stopped taking intakes. We stopped taking intakes as of May the 1st. We've had numerous calls from women wanting to get in. Sorry, makes me emotional. We had a father call last week begging for help for his daughter, and we had to say no. We've had women calling us from some of the homeless shelters in town, desperate, telling us that they'll do anything to get in. But we can't, because in our core programs, our long-term housing and our life skills and employment programs, we're full. And women who need to get immediately out don't often do well when you just stick them right into a life skills program. They need that opportunity for stabilization and some of that initial trauma recovery. And so without the Safe House, we can't offer that to them. And so we've had to say no to women coming in. We will close our doors, officially close our doors June the 30th and use July to move out our furniture. And we're creative. All nonprofits are creative, and organizations that really care about serving the vulnerable, we all do everything that we can. So we're working on a contingency plan. We might have to do some adjustments and come up with some sort of a pseudo safe house. But with safe houses, they're called that for a reason. They're women who are often in witness protection. Sometimes women who are coming from other provinces under the direction of the RCMP, women who have been key witnesses for VICE, for local VICE and organized crime units with the police service. And so you have to be really mindful about where safe houses are and how people have access to them and what sorts of services that you put in place. And what we have right now is the right model. It's proven. The government itself said that they wouldn't have funded it for 4 years if they didn't think it was a great program that was not just saving taxpayer monies, but really saving lives. So so we're doing everything we can to keep our safe house open. And if our safe house closes, we'll do everything we can to continue to help women and save them from the slavery, really, that they've been entrenched in. For a lot of the women that we meet, what has finally brought them to the place where they want to exit or they come to us for help is that they generally have children. And for a lot of the women that we meet, their children are no longer with them. They're in care. They've been removed and placed with someone else. And for some women, it's that they discover that they're pregnant, or that they have a young child who's just been removed from them. And that is often the catalyst. I think for a lot of women, they sort of say, I've had too many babies taken away, and I'm not willing to sacrifice my family anymore. And, based on the fear that, and the threats that are being held over my head, or the concerns about poverty or drug addiction that have led some women to become involved in sex trafficking in the first place. And so, a lot of times it's their babies that they just decide that's enough. I want a healthy family, and I want to contribute back to the community just like any other mom would want to do.
Right. And what gets, like, for the average Calgarian who has no idea about trafficking, like, what gets women into trafficking a lot of times?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. I mean, women who are being trafficked, because that's what we're talking about, human trafficking, are women who somebody, generally a pimp or a trafficker, is making money off of the sale of that woman's body over and over and over again. These guys and gals who are involved in trafficking other people are they're actually incredibly shrewd business people who use the same sort of techniques as I'd say somebody who's terrorizing someone else would use. So they will groom young girls into the trade by providing them with lovely gifts and those sorts of things, and making them feel like they're the most special, most loved, gal in the world. And then they'll turn around and say, okay, now you owe me. Oftentimes there's drugs involved, and so even a girl who has never been involved with drugs before might try something, become addicted, and again, you owe me. Now you have to start paying for it. For some young women, and for some older women as well, they're trading sex for survival. Either because it is the only way that they can think of, or that they think they have access to be able to provide for themselves, and also because somebody is holding it over their head. So a pimp, sometimes a boyfriend, sometimes a husband who also plays that role, is saying, this is how I need you to contribute, and this is the only way that, that you can live here and be part of this house, is if you earn your keep. I mean, for some pimps, they have what's called a stable. They've got tons of gals who are working for them and making a whole lot of money, and that all becomes part of that sort of like almost a mind control to keep women involved. There's a lot of lies involved in human trafficking, particularly sex trafficking, and there's a lot of threats. And so a lot of women are too fearful to leave, or they think that they'll be alone and that no one will ever accept them or love them or bring them back into the community. So it's an incredible act of courage for a young girl or a woman to decide that they want to leave that life and and turn things around for themselves. Human trafficking itself has become such an issue across the world and in Canada that our own federal government changed legislation just in recent years to include human trafficking, and included in that is sexual exploitation, or sort of living off of the sexual exploitation of another human being. So that's how much of an issue it is in our country. In Calgary, it's such an issue that we've just launched our very first Sexual Exploitation Awareness Day under proclamation of the mayor, and so that will be an annual day every April because this issue is so rampant. And if you consider the statistics around women who get involved in the sex trade, a very high percentage of them have been sexually abused at some point in their life, generally when they were children or otherwise abused as children. And if you think about 1 in 4 girls having been sexually abused in their lifetime, that's really what the statistics have been. And I'd suggest that it might even be less than 1 in 4, like 1 in 3, maybe 1 in 2, because not everybody tells. And if we just look at our popular media that tells us that we need to be a certain way to be sexy and to attract attention and that sort of thing, it's very easy for young girls and women to get drawn into sexual exploitation and to be trafficked by someone. And in Calgary, I can tell you, at our safe house, we've never had an empty bed. We've never not had a wait list, and our programs, our core programs at Servants Anonymous, are always full. And I've been there for 2.5 years, but Servants Anonymous Society has been around for 24 years. I think it's really important for all of us, particularly if we're thinking about this idea of invisibility, that at the very least what we could do is not have people be invisible anymore. Recognize that there are concerns, recognize that there are women and there are children who are experiencing all sorts of issues in our city, including homelessness and poverty and exploitation and violence. And sometimes even the smallest gesture, a smile or a sympathetic look or a greeting can make a world of difference. Like I know it does for me, and so let's just not have people be invisible at all anymore. And maybe we create a space for people that they might feel more brave about coming out and asking for help.